AIM Industries in Tempe, Arizona is your headquarters for sport truck accessories. Did you realize that when you purchase a product from AIM Industries that we built it just for you in our own facility? From thermoforming plastics and metal fabrication to fiberglass manufacturing and sewing, we even screen our own t-shirts. All of this means direct from the manufacturer pricing that will please your pocketbook. Why pay for 2, 3, or even 4-step distribution when you can have it on your doorstep tomorrow from AIM Industries? Call AIM Industries on any of our 10-800 numbers. You will reach a seasoned professional, eager to assist you. Our clients have become accustomed to fast, friendly service. We process your order with lightning speed on our sophisticated network computer system. Then the order is automatically printed in the shipping department. Each customer's product is pulled and inspected for quality, then carefully packed, one order at a time to ensure near perfect accuracy. Our automatic shipping manifest system guarantees each and every customer that your packages are sent direct to your doorstep by the fastest and most efficient means possible. First is fiberglass manufacturing. AIM Industries occupies 2 separate facilities, one for strictly hand-laid product and the other a completely automated facility for chopper gun operation. Both plants are managed by seasoned fiberglass experts. Next, the thermoforming department. Here, many of the popular products that our customers have come to love are produced from all aluminum tooling that hold a tolerance unequaled in the aftermarket industry. The finest equipment money can buy and all aluminum tooling puts the AIM Industries thermoform product light years ahead of the competition. Then, our metal fabrication department, complete with the most sophisticated production computerized equipment available. Here is where great products like the full line of billet accessories and Phantom grills are produced. We also manufacture a full line of sport truck lowering suspension under our own label, Blueprint, which is regarded as one of the finest sport truck suspension systems in the world. Fourth is our complete in-house advertising agency. Every aspect of our advertising is done at the corporate facility in Tempe, Arizona. From studio photography for posters to line art and computer-generated catalogs and advertisements. We even produce our own internal forms, packaging designs, instruction sheets, and vinyl decals. Once again, the finest equipment money can buy, coupled with highly skilled professionals, means unequal quality throughout. As you can clearly see when choosing products for your truck, you just can't beat the AIM advantage. Great pricing, direct to you, without the middleman markup that you pay when purchasing other name brands. That's the AIM advantage. When working under a vehicle, always put the vehicle on jack stands. Have the vehicle on solid cement with the opposing wheels blocked, and always double check your stands for secure footing. Set the parking brake if you are working on the front of a vehicle. Never work under a vehicle alone or supported only by a jack. We recommend that all work be done by a qualified mechanic. The spindles are designed to work with factory stock 6-inch wheels with 3.5-inch back spacing. In some cases, minor modification must be made to allow clearance. In all cases, the vehicle must be realigned or your tires will wear out prematurely. In all cases, you must torque any bolts to the factory recommended specs and once again immediately after driving. Take all safety precautions. This video will deal with the general installation instructions for spindles, lower ball joint spacers, coil springs, control arms, sway bars, hangers, lowering blocks, leaf springs, axle flip kits, C-notch sections, hot track suspension, and slam air, springs, shocks, and so forth. First, we'll begin with shackles. Shackles are installed at the rear of the leaf spring. Put the bottom of the shackle into the rear spring perch and insert the bolt. Then install the bolt into the top hole in the shackle. This will give you a 2-inch drop on the rear. If you want a 1-inch drop, use the bottom hole. And then grind off any excess material that may possibly hit the bed when you put the bed back on. By now it should be apparent that it's much easier to work with the truck bed off. You must first remove the old hanger using an air chisel, punch, and safety glasses. The hanger raises the spring perch approximately 2 inches for an additional 2 inches of drop when coupled with the shackle, for a total of 4 inches. Simply install the bolts and tighten to factory specs. Be sure to retighten after driving 100 miles. Now we're about to install an axle relocator known as a flip kit. This modification takes the axle and puts it underneath the frame for a drop of 6 inches. Later it will be necessary to install a C-section for proper clearance. Take the locator and insert it in the bottom of the axle saddle. Making sure the ears protrude into the ends and seat properly in the saddle. Note the hole is off-centered and goes towards the front. This shifts the axle back for proper realignment. Make sure the spring bolt is properly centered and raise spring up and fit into the axle saddle. Next, install the U-bolts. Here we make it look a little simple, but actually you have to do a little bit of pre-alignment for proper fitment. Now we'll take the spring plate with the turn downs facing down, and again with the centering hole towards the front, and drop the U-bolts through the spring plate. Simply bolt up and torque to factory specs, remembering again to retorque after the first 100 miles. Do not install a C-notch section with any other lowering device, such as shackles or hangers. It is intended to be used in conjunction with the flip kit. Cut the frame out with a die grinder. Do not use a torch. It will fatigue the metal. Install the C-notch section with the long portion to the front of the vehicle. Here we have pre-drilled the holes, obviously. Use the C-notch section to mark your frame for drilling the holes. Install the bolts, tightening again to factory specs, making sure that you retorque the bolts after the first 100 miles. Now we're going to install a shock relocator bracket, which goes between the cross members just behind the drive shaft and rear pinion. This allows us to adjust the shocks into any one of the 3 pre-drilled holes and makes for a nice, clean, professional installation. Again, make sure that you properly torque the bolts and check again after the first 100 miles. Properly install the bushing and frame spacers, taking care not to over-compress. Again, note the 3 holes, allowing for a different shock inclination and shock length. Next, we're going to install both a lowered control arm and a spindle. This particular example is on a General Motors full-size 88 and up. The lower control arm with the ball joint pressed in place. Do not hammer or force the ball joint. It must be pressed professionally. The use of a lowered control arm and a spindle both allow you to drop the vehicle a total of approximately 5 inches. But of course, that's not really recommended. Next, we're installing a blueprint spring. This is for an additional inch. In this particular case, we would have lowered the vehicle a total of 6 inches on the front. Install spring so that the top of the coil is properly seated in the base of the lowered control arm. It's recommended to use rubber spring pads. When removing the spring, be sure that you properly load and unload the spring by placing the jack close to the ball joint to properly compress and decompress the spring. Raise lowered control arm compressed spring using the weight of the vehicle, again with the jack close to the ball joint. With the spring fully compressed, extend the shock absorber and install through the spring. On earlier models, Chevys and Fords, the shock will be mounted outside the spring. It's recommended to install new shock absorbers when doing any suspension work, and you will need a shorter shock in any case where you have used a lowered spring. Make sure that you do not over-tighten the nuts and bolts on the shock absorber. Next, we will be installing the spindle. Please refer to the written instructions for proper disassembly of the brake hardware and handling of the spindle. The long extended portion connects to the tie rod, and the upper and lower holes are for the upper and lower ball joint. First, insert the lower ball joint and screw the nut on, making sure to tighten up and then back off one castellation to insert the cotter key. Do not over-tighten. Over-tightening will cause stress on the shaft and possible breakage under load. Next, install the upper ball joint using the same tightening procedures. Anytime you are putting on a spindle or a control arm is the proper time to replace ball joints and shocks. AIM Industries has an ample supply at very competitive prices. The complete package is on this full-size GM, dropping it 5 inches into the weeds. Next, reinstall or install your new bump stops. Now we are going to install a sway bar. A sway bar is especially tuned to provide more resistance in cornering and, of course, minimize sway. The end-length bushings are installed using the procedure shown, making sure the bushings and the washers are assembled according to the diagram in the instructions and as shown in this video. Next, install the end link into the position shown on the lowered control arm. Take care again not to over-tighten or over-compress the bushings. The D-link bushing is installed over the sway bar. The clamp strap is put in place and then lifted and bolted to the underside of the frame. Next, we'll be doing a hot tracks rear leaf spring replacement system. This particular installation is for those of you that want maximum traction in a passenger car ride. Remove your original springs. Take the new hot tracks suspension and first install into the front spring perch. Then take the lowering block showing the wide portion to the rear and install it on the angled plate on the hot tracks bar. The pin on top of the lowering block will seat into the bottom of the axle. Raise in position. Check for proper alignment. And then install the new provided U-bolts. This installation assumes that you have followed the instructions for removal of the leaf springs at the beginning of the video. Please refer to written instructions for further clarification. It is extremely important on any installation of any suspension component to properly torque the bolts and recheck again after driving 100 miles. Now we will be installing the new shock absorbers. In this case, we're installing it into the newly installed cross member, adjusting the top of the shock absorber for angle. And here we are installing a secondary shock system, which is optional. The upper shock mount was covered in the previous portion of this video. Use proper spacing, keeping in mind this is a general installation video using a Nissan in this particular example. Mounting and hardware will vary. The panhard bar in this particular case is attached to the rear pumpkin and the frame. Make sure the panhard bar is approximately horizontal with the vehicle in the weighted position. Use a professional welder to weld the pumpkin base. following installation is the general installation instructions for twin I-beams for full-size Ford and Ranger. Take all safety precautions, blocking the vehicle and safely jacking up. Remove the upper and lower ball joint nuts and separate ball joints from the I-beam housing. Remove the tie rod. Then break loose the steering linkage at the pitman arm. Separate the rotor from the I-beam and suspend with a piece of wire. Do not suspend by the brake cable or the brake hose. In this illustration, we have already removed the coil spring. Next, we'll be removing the coil spring vertical bolt that holds the spring perch on. And complete the removal of the I-beam. Here we are showing the difference between a stock I-beam and the new lowered I-beam. The offset is about 3 inches. Be sure to lubricate all urethane bushings per the written instructions. Now reinstall the I-beam on the pivot bolt. It's a good idea to put in new ball joints when installing a new I-beam or lowered control arms. Replace the spring perch using the long vertical bolt and securely tighten to factory specs. Here we are reinstalling the eccentric cam for a proper alignment adjustment. You should use a 0 to 3 degree cam. Aftermarket cams are available for a broader range of adjustment. Again, reinstall all the bolts, washers, and cotter keys, tightening up to factory specs. Do not over-tighten the nuts on the bottom of the ball joints. They can be too tight, causing stress. Back off a castellation and insert the cotter key. Reinstall the tie rod ends. And it is extremely important to proceed to the nearest alignment shop after completing your installation. Yeah.